Well, good Wednesday evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bowling with the Fef, a platform for you to share your unique bowling story, all live on our YouTube channel, and always having a great time doing it. If you're interested in finding out more about the show or coming on, let me know. We have a Facebook group, a public one, on the Facebook page. It's just under Bowling with the Fef with an exclamation point. Lots of good conversation in there about bowling, current happenings, other things that have to do with what is really the greatest sport in the world. And, you know, just my opinion, but I tend to think a lot of the folks that watch this show tend to agree. At least I hope so. Anyway, if you're interested in finding out more about when our videos are coming up, when we have live streams, things like that, in the right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little link that says subscribe. And please do subscribe, hit that notification bell, and you'll be the first to know when we have both videos and live streams, as we do just about every week, and we have for the past year or so. So I want to get on to our guest today, and I'm really excited to have him on. He has been on many a live stream before, so this is nothing new to him. But we have Bill O'Neill, 13-time PBA Tour champion, 2 majors, 10 regional championships, future PBA Hall of Famer, and a participant in the 2021 CP3 PBA Celebrity Invitational. How you doing tonight, Bill?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that celebrity event. That's coming up on Sunday. It's on Fox. Check your local listings for that. Now, over here in Western Wisconsin, the only time I could find was on FS1 at 10 p.m. So that may be the case for you. You know, on our Fox station, the Packers will be busy dismantling the Chicago Bears during the day. But, you know, this is a pre-recorded event from a few weeks ago. And, Bill, I'm guessing there was some kind of NDA about the competition, the outcome, all that stuff that you had to sign. But let's talk about your partner. Your partner in this is Hannibal Burress, actor, comedian, voiceover actor, et cetera, et cetera. How did you two get paired up, and what was it like to bowl with him?
So he was a last-minute ad because Devin Booker wasn't able to make it, and so luckily he came in, and Hannibal was awesome. He was such a good dude. He was really funny. He was really funny on the broadcast. He was funny off the lanes. He was chill. He was a cool dude, and I'm glad he was able to make it.
Yeah. Today, the PBA Tour put up one of those red carpet videos that featured Hannibal Burress. They've done that for some of the other participants. And one of the big things that I like to try and focus on in this show is context, because a lot of times we don't get, you know, enough context with this type of thing. So Mike Jakubowski, who was a guest on our show, episode 28, was interviewing him. And he asked Burress to describe his bowling style. And he said he can be a wild card and chaotic, but sometimes very focused. And he also said, I like bowling solo because you can get into a rhythm and make corrections on mistakes really quickly and get into a nice flow. So 2 things. One, was this thing, the red carpet thing, recorded before the event? And did he know that this was a doubles event?
It was definitely we did the red carpet before the event, so he might not have done. I mean, like I said, he was a last minute flying in there. There was a piece of it. They do it every year. That was a solo thing. You know, it was a kind of last man standing type of thing, like low ball out deal with just the celebrity. So that part was solo. But he might not have known. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Sure. Was it kind of relegated to, okay, you guys go out there and bowl, or did you get to talk with him? Did you get to coach him up a little bit before this thing?
Yeah, so the place we were at, a 2-sided center, and we were on the other side, you know, warming up, you know, because anytime there's a tape show, we really you have a schedule of when it's going to start, but it's always late, so you never really truly know exactly when you're starting, so you're kind of just throwing balls and staying loose. But he threw a lot of shots. Mm-hmm. We had to actually call him over in the beginning of the show to be like, hey, we're ready. Like, you gotta. And he was still like practicing on the other side. So he was taking it, you know, pretty serious. So that was cool.
Yeah. When when you end up finishing this thing and everybody goes home, I'm assuming that, those of you who are the pros, the guys who are into bowling, hope that these celebs take something out of this. Maybe they can tell family, friends, maybe they can be an ambassador for the game. What do you hope that Hannibal and the other celebs take out of this one?
Yeah, I mean, listen, anytime the guys with that kind of reach, social media, if they put it out there and share it around on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, it's cool, and I think it helps us, just to gain a different audience that we may not otherwise have, that wouldn't even know that we exist. And I think that's part of the reason why we've done this event, for so many years, and why it's been one of our most highly rated events. We can get into a different audience, and like I just checked our local listings here. We're 4:30 Eastern time, right after the Packers Bears game on Fox. So that's it's a great lead in, So hopefully, people stick around for that, and they see us bowling, and they're like, oh wow, there's Chris Paul, there's Hannibal Burress. I'm gonna check this out, and maybe we grab a few people to check us out a little further.
Yeah. Certainly can't hurt the cause of getting more people interested in the sport of bowling. Let me go on to something else. On Monday, Jerry Mars, who was our guest on episode 43, asked on Facebook if anybody knew when the new PBA Tour schedule would be released. And Commissioner Tom Clark, who was also a guest on our show, chimed in. He commented, pretty soon, bet on next week. Now, when they release a schedule, are you guys finding out the same time as we are, or do you have advanced knowledge?
If I poked around, I probably would get bits and pieces here or there, but for the most part, I find out the whole schedule when everybody else does. There was a few years where I was on the players committee, so we would get some things that they would, throw at us from time to time, like, hey, what do you think about this, that, or the other thing? And we would know a time frame of certain events. But yeah, this year I've got no idea. I'm pretty sure it's, we'll start in second week of January maybe, and go from there, like we have been the past few years.
Yeah, and having fans back, things like that, I would assume there's a lot of anticipation, not only for those of us, like me, who follow this kind of thing, but those of you who are, going to be competing.
Bowling without fans was horrible. It stinks. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel the same. There's no buzz. It's just, you're just listening to the other pros complain, which gets old after a while. You like to hear the buzz of the crowd, and people asking you different questions, and just people enjoying themselves watching their favorite professionals. And when you get to the TV show and everybody's there and they're cheering and they're having a good time, that's what we look forward to. Like, making a TV show and then there's no one there, and it's not the same. Like last year when I won the playoffs, it was the biggest check I ever got. I'm there, I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. The year before that I came in second, and it was a huge letdown in front of probably the best crowd we ever had. And then I come the next year and I win, and we had taped so much that day that when I, like 15 minutes after I was done, and I did a couple of the interviews for Flow Bowling, and all of a sudden I look around, there's no one there. All the crew had been there all day. All the people that work for the PBA had been there all day. They're almost all gone. I mean, I was in my car driving home like probably 20 minutes after the show was over, and that never happens. It can't possibly happen with people there and other media obligations and things. And so it was just really weird. The whole situation was really weird, and I'm glad to get hopefully back to somewhat of normal situation.
Yeah, as normal as we can come by at this time in life anyway. Last week, we had Del Warren on the show, and he had some really nice things to say about you, and I want to play it back so you can hear it and react to it. Here's what he had to say.
One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Yeah. Absolutely respectful and nice, and what a game he's got, what a career he's had. But that comes to mind, but the other thing that comes to mind is just how gracious he is and easygoing as it gets.
Now, if Dell comes on and tells everybody, oh, he kicks puppies, I mean, it's going to be really awkward. But to hear him say, that kind of thing about how nice you are and how gracious you are, what does that mean coming from a guy like that?
It's really cool. I mean, anytime anybody pays you a compliment like that, it's good. And that's how I would want anybody that you would ask them about me, that would say that before they would mention anything about bowling, because that's what my parents would hope for as well. They would, my wife, my kids, they would rather you say something nice about me personally than my bowling first. And that's kind of what I pride myself on, and in the bowling community is I try to even like forget people like Dell who's in the industry, like fans and people who are in the bowling center. Like I try to make sure, because we are bowlers, and it's not like I'm walking in the grocery store and 10,000 people know who I am. No one knows who I am in the grocery store. It's just in the bowling center. So I feel like you could take the time and be gracious with everyone that you meet, because we don't have that many interactions like that, and we can just try to make people's day, which it can be hard for me too, because I don't ever really see myself like that. I don't see myself as somebody. I'm always like, still at this point, like shocked when people like if there's a line of people that want my autograph. It's weird to me. I still can't grasp it, kind of, because I've always approached it as I just do my job, and then when I do it well, I'm on television, and it's not even like I don't think of myself as being on TV. It's the show. It's the finals of the tournament, not necessarily like, hey, maybe 1 million people are watching you right now. I've never really thought of it like that.
Yeah, probably a good way to look at it too, competitiveness wise. So, we do obviously talk about bowling and our guests' bowling stories, and you got to kind of reset it all the way to the beginning. So let's start with how and when and where you got your start in the sport of bowling.
So when people ask me all the time, like, oh, what age did you start bowling? I have no idea. My whole life. I've been bowling my entire life. My dad bowled. My mom bowled. My grandfather was big into it. My uncle. So I was just always in it. It took me a long time when I was a kid to even realize that it wasn't something that people just did, like that everyone. I thought it was, until the time I was 12 years old, I just assumed it was like a mainstream thing that everybody did, because that's what I did every Saturday. I went and watched my dad bowl Friday night sometimes, and just part of my life since the time I was little. So it just, when you're that deep in it from that early of an age, it's almost hard to avoid it.
Yeah. Was there something about it that you can remember that maybe hooked you more than anything else? Or was it just everything? Was it the whole atmosphere of it?
I think, my family being involved in it was the first hook, because me and my dad have been really close since I was little, and like, I just want to be around my dad, so that was like, oh, my dad's into this. Well, I'm going to be into it too. But then from there, as a kid, and even as an adult, you're drawn to things that you're naturally good at. And I just happened to be, I never as a kid, even as a older kid, that I think that I would be a professional or even a successful professional, but I was, better than the people that I was with in the local bowling center. So I was like, wow, I'm going to keep doing this, because I'm winning. I'm high average in my junior league, and I'm just going to keep doing it. So I just kept going on, and I had a lot of interest in a lot of other sports, particularly basketball and baseball. But I peaked at like height at like 12. That was it. 5'8" was that's all I was going to get to. So basketball, started to get worse and worse as time went on, because I just couldn't really compete in some of the games I would have liked to have played in.
Yeah.
But bowling, I was always, I stayed at that level, and I just kept working at it.
Sure. You're in suburban Philadelphia, and you're a native to that area. What was the junior scene like back then when you were kind of growing in the sport? Was it a pretty robust junior program that you got into?
It was huge, and it's definitely the reason why I am where I am today. High school bowling was big. I mean, I went to a Catholic high school, and we had a big, the Philadelphia Catholic League was big, and then the public league was big as well. So we would have scrimmages against the public schools in the area, and then we also had the Junior Bowlers Tour, and so every weekend, from time I was probably a sophomore in high school, I was, Saturday and Sunday, we were we would be in Jersey or Connecticut on Saturday, and somewhere in Pennsylvania on Sunday. We did that for a lot of the time in my high school days, just traveling around bowling. And even though back then it was mostly house shots that but you would bowl on different centers house shots. So they were all different one way or another. And sometimes we'd get beat up wood lanes or HPLs and then pro anvil, whatever. There was all types of different services. So just that type of experience bowling in different bowling centers and just such a high level of competition. I mean, Rob Pierce had bowled and he won a bunch of tournaments. I mean, that may not seem like something now because he's terrible now, but when he was a kid, he was a lot better. And then, we bowled with Mike Fagan, was, a little bit older than me, a year older than me, but he was there. We had just so many guys who were incredible at that age. So we all grew up together and we all just grew up wanting to continue to beat each other. And that's what just drives that much competition and makes everybody better.
Yeah. Rob, when he was on the show, mentioned that your dad was your coach. Did he start coaching you right away? Did it take a while before, he wanted to help you grow your game in that way?
I don't remember exactly when when I would work with him as a coach, but yeah, he was always helping me out along the way. And he taught me a lot of really good lessons about bowling and about how and me as now as a dad, when I coach my son, I take a lot of the things that we worked on, not exactly the, fundamentals type of stuff of the game, but just he kind of just let me do my thing, and then we would, when I would go to tournaments, he wouldn't really coach me at tournaments. And there was a lot of times, because he was my dad, I would get mad at him because I would want him to guide me while I was at the tournament. He would say, nope, we're not doing that. We'll work on everything that you did wrong. I'm watching every shot, even though I'm not standing behind you. I'm seeing every shot, and then we'll work on it, when we practice. But you gotta, because I'm not always going to be there, so you're gonna have to figure it out. And it was one of the greatest lessons he ever taught me, because now that I'm a professional, he's not there that often, so I have to, got to figure it out.
Yeah. And that's really cool in my mind because, I grew up and my dad was my coach. So I get it, but I wasn't the most coachable person back then. Would you say that you were pretty coachable growing up?
Oh, I mean, I am now, but certainly not. No kid listens to their father, especially at 8, 10, 12 years old. You're zoning out. You don't want your dad to be right. You want to do your own thing. You want to prove to him that more than he does, even though you don't know anything at 10 or 12 years old. And I'm going through that with my son right now. He doesn't listen to me. So he's, it's all getting paid forward. So everybody, every kid's exactly the same.
Yep. My 9-year-old, fits that mold just perfectly. So you mentioned the Philadelphia Catholic Schools League. Big Mike told me that that's how you guys met, through competition. He said that you didn't start out being friends. He said that you started out knowing each other as rivals. And as you were both really good high school bowlers in the Philadelphia Catholic Schools League, he said that your mom, who we lost a few years back, big shout to Mare, that he misses her for sure, actually hated him when she first knew him, but grew to know him and eventually love him. I mean, that's, that says a lot, I think.
Yeah, I can't actually pinpoint the exact time that Mike and I started becoming friends, but I do remember, he bowled for a rival school, and we would, and I remember thinking, man, this is loud, man. This is a loud dude, just constantly running his mouth. He's always trying to talk trash and start things. And I'm like, who's this guy? Who is this guy? What's he doing? And then I don't know, just fast forward to time, we just became really good friends, and we started traveling to all those junior bowling tournaments together. And, we've been really, really close ever since. And, there's not many people in my life. I hope he doesn't watch this, because I don't usually like to say too many nice things about Mike, but there's not hardly any people in my life that I've known for that long that I'm still friends with, and it just, no matter where I was or what I was doing, he always kept in touch. He always called, he always texted, no matter what. And, that's the thing that my mom loved about him the most, is that he was just a friend. He was just a great friend. And, we're, I say a lot of nasty things about Mike, especially on Twitter or whatever. Like we go back and forth, but he is generally one of my best friends, and I'm really glad that we're still friends 20 some odd years later.
Yeah. And he mentioned JBTs. He said, you kind of became friends through competition, traveled to JBTs together, and that's where you met Rob and a lot of other great guys. And I'm guessing that, competing with guys like Mike and Rob and whoever else was at JBT at the time is really, kind of making you a lot better bowler by proxy.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, trust me, there was plenty of times where I was bowling against some of these guys in these junior tournaments, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to be able to make it. There's just no way. Some of these guys are just they're too good, and you can either, I guess it's like a fight or flight type of mentality at that point. You either decide, well, I'm not going to do it, or hey, I really got to get better, and I have to, I got to keep working at this. And I one of the graphics I saw you put up it said BUZZSAW, which was one of the Robert Mike gave you that. Was my nickname, and when I was in high school, and that was because when I first started bowling those JBTs, I threw it straight, like straight, like Butch Soper, Ernie Schlegel straight. And I would always do really good in qualifying, and then we would get to match play, and they didn't re-oil, and then they would always get super wet dry for me, and I would get killed. People would run me over, and so like I think it was like in between my sophomore and junior year, I came back that next year, and I started to learn how to hook it. And so I showed up at like one of the first tournaments, and they're like, yo, what are you doing? How did you learn how to bowl like this? And I'm like, I don't know. I worked with some guy at home, and I was watching how he bowled, and I just practiced, and this is where I am. And it's like, oh my God, you're a BUZZSAW now. And that's where I came from.
That's a great nickname.
Yeah.
He said, about JBTs, he being Mike, that they were Saturday and Sundays. So your mom would drive on Saturdays and his dad would drive on Sundays. And, he's got lots of great memories about those trips. But one of them was that his dad always drove with the window down. And you used to bring a blanket so you didn't die of hypothermia driving through the mountains of Pennsylvania on the way to bowl. Was it that bad?
Yeah, because his dad used to like to drive with the windows down because he liked to smoke cigars. And I'm not talking like he used to like crack the window. The window was down. It was all it was good. And so like we would have to like put blankets over our head, because sometimes like wintertime you still have the residue from the morning dew or the snow or whatever, and it's just wet and then just blowing in the back seat, and you're covered up with a blanket, and it's freezing, and you're driving like an hour and a half like that. At the end of the day, it was like great stories and great times. Mike also had, I guess he didn't tell you about when he got pulled over.
He did not.
Okay, so we like I said, we bowled a lot. We bowled a lot of tournaments, and we're always trying to find tricks to help us out with our thumbs and stuff, because they would swell a lot, and we didn't. Technology wasn't where it is now. The internet, we didn't have a lot of things, so you just urban legends and myths about how to do certain things. Like you hear from old school guys how they would do it. So back then, people said a potato. If you cut a hole in a potato and you put your thumb in the potato, it would reduce the swelling. So Mike was driving on the Pennsylvania Turnpike to one of these tournaments, and he was going a little quick, as Mike would tend to do, and he got pulled over. And so the cop comes to the door, and he's like, "Oh, license and registration." And Mike's got his hands on the wheels because it's this big ass potato on his thumb. And the cop's like, "License and registration. Why do you have a giant potato on your thumb? What is going on here? Why?" And he had to like explain the story to him. The cop's like, "Potato. All right, sounds good. See you later."
I heard Mark Roth did that back in the day, or at least tried it. But was more...
now we have interchangeable thumbs, and then we can just make use less tape or something.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do things like that now. I'll stick like napkins in my thumbs or shrink it a little bit, but no potatoes. I'm out on the potatoes.
Yeah. So Mike told another great story about you and Christy. He said that one day he stopped by Bristol Pike Lanes, which is a center in his area. And he saw who he says is this really attractive young girl bowling. He says he was not in the market, so to speak. but that he started asking around who the girl was. So someone tells me that it's Dave White's daughter, and that's someone he knew through bowling league, and he happened to be there at the time. So he somehow got him to introduce Mike to his daughter, Christy, who was a college bowler at Fairleigh Dickinson at the time, and that they chatted, and that he found out she knew some people from the school he had graduated from. So he gets in his car and immediately calls you, who he says was in the market at the time, and told you that he just met this chick who's really attractive. She throws it great, bowls in college, etc., and that you need to find a way to run into her. And he says you did. Now they're married with 2 kids. That's how I look out for my guys. Is that all accurate?
I don't. The lead up to it, I can't confirm that because I wasn't there. But yes, he did. I vividly remember him calling me and said, because he had said, because Christy's team, they won the national title her junior year, I believe. So when it was on ESPN2 at the time, so he called me. He's like, hey, this girl I was telling you about, they're on TV right now. So I was like, all right, so I checked it out. And at the time, I'm like, all right, Mike, like, I don't know. Like, who knows if something like this is going to work out? I don't know. But she lived 10 minutes from me. And I, we didn't even know, had no idea about each other. We didn't know each other at all. And then just, I ran into her a couple of times at the local bowling center, and yeah. And, Mike will take credit for that. And so, he's going to probably tell my kids that as they get older, like, hey, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me. So I'm sure he'll do that.
He's practically their uncle, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely Uncle Mike.
So, did they, or I'm kind of out of order here, but, we should start out with Rob, because you met Rob just after Mike, and the way he tells it, he said that, you guys have a mutual love of the Notorious B.I.G. And I asked you before the show if you have any siblings, because you have a son of your own now, and I was curious if your siblings did for your son what my brother did for me when my son was born. Did he hook you up like that?
No, he didn't. He did not, and I'm gonna have to ask him about that. But it's funny, you did a Big E T-shirt, because me and Mike, a few of our friends went to there was a Bad Boy reunion concert. This had to be like 5 or 6 years ago, and Mike bought us all Big E T-shirts for the concert.
Ah, cool.
And so, but no, I didn't. No Big E onesies.
It was a good excuse.
That's cool. That's really cool.
It was a good excuse to put it up and put the kid up.
I have seen a lot of Wu-Tang merchandise for kids, like all like little onesies and little T-shirts and stuff. That's pretty funny. As
well, there should be. Kids need to learn early.
That's right.
When you graduated high school, you didn't go to a 4-year college right away. Did you always think that college bowling would be in your future?
I had hoped, but when I graduated high school, around my area, I couldn't even do this now. I was 17 when I graduated high school. My birthday is in October, and now our cutoff around here is August 31st. So I would have been in the following year. So at that time, I really didn't feel like I was ready or mature enough to go away to school. I just wasn't. I just didn't feel like I was really shy kid. I was super shy as a young kid, and then Rob went out to Saginaw Valley, and so we had talked a lot during that year that I went to community college, and he's like, "You got to come out here. This is to be the best thing for you," And I was like, "All right, I think I'm ready. I have to get away from home because I have to figure out how to break out of my shell." And I mean, as a high school kid, if my mom would have found out that I was able to do an interview like this and actually talk to you for an hour, like, she would have been like, no, there's no way. He couldn't talk to anybody for that long, and it's because of, Rob convinced me to go out to school, and forced it. I was 700 miles away from home. I had no choice but to attempt to meet new people and, break out of the shell a little bit. And so definitely eternally grateful for Rob for, pushing me in that direction.
Yeah. You knew Rob coming in. How quickly did you mesh with those other guys and with Coach when you got there?
Bowling's an easy, sport to kind of mesh with people. We're just around all the time, you know, like, and especially when you get there and people realize that you're good. So no matter what people are drawn to people who are good at things. So that made it easier for me too. People like that weren't as good, they wanted to be around and you know, and talk about bowling and stuff like that. So then you just meet friends instantly that way. And that's kind of how it all started for me.
Yeah. I mean, the benefit of hindsight shows us that you were one of the nation's top college players right out of the gate. I mean, you were successful. You know, won Player of the Year right away, All-American, all that stuff. But did it take any time for you to get accustomed to the college game, or was it just, you know, you just picked up where you left off?
No, I pretty much picked up where I left off. And it was, I think that, you know, just that we're everybody who's good at anything has had a lot of things happen to them are really fortunate. And I'm certainly no exception. And one of the things about college bowling is that it really like enhanced my strengths. I didn't have to worry about any of my weaknesses, because at that time in college bowling, we didn't bowl on anything that really, it wasn't until I got on tour that I really got the kick in the teeth about where my weaknesses were, and just growing up where I did and how I bowl. I threw it pretty hard. I was always pretty accurate, and I threw it pretty hard. And we never really bowled on anything that, you know, where you had to be softer and slow down and, you know, kind of be softer with your hand. And we didn't have to do any of that stuff. So when I got to college bowling 10 guys on a pair for 6 games with no re-oil. I mean, we would always get to a point where I could throw it harder than everybody, and I was more accurate than everybody, and I just would win, because that was just the way that the game was set up. And because if you talk to Rob, he'll have to mention this, but Rob bowled leadoff and I bowled anchor. And Rob was a great leadoff bowler because he was pretty accurate too. And so whenever we would go to the next pair, he would always give me a good read. So there was so many times where he would get so angry with me because he would start out like open spare and I would have a double, and he would be so angry at the end of the tournament. Like, oh, Bill, you won all events. You were third in all events. And he's like, yeah, that's great. If he had the bowl leadoff, I would have won. So.
Yeah, even to this day. I mean, he came on the show, and you know, you had told me about, you know, that about him, and he said it hurts me to my core. You know, still to this day, he just does not, you know, not interested in being the leadoff guy back then. But, you know, speaking of Rob, he said that your physical game was always solid, but I want you to take a listen to what he said about your mental game when he came on the show here.
The one thing that separated Bill from really anybody else that I knew was his mental game. His mental game was so strong. I mean, yeah, he was fiery, but his hunger, his killing attitude on the lanes, he was nobody's friend. If he lost, he would leave and you weren't able to talk to him. You know, great guy would do anything for you, but on the lanes, he was a killer. And I feel like he's still like that. And I feel like there's a lot of pros these days that aren't like that.
So you need kind of a balance between the nice guy and the killer on the lanes. How do you do it?
I'm ultra competitive. No matter what I do, I'm really competitive. I hate losing. And I think you would find most people who are really good at anything are that way. It's just, I can't take losing. It's really difficult. And that's why, like, I'm always like tinkering with my game. Like, I just changed my grip because I didn't like how last year went. I'm always trying to do things. I want to win. The feeling of winning is unmatched. And so I'm just really, really competitive. And, you know, usually it's like 10 minutes after I'm done, I'm fine. You know, it's just like, but that was a hard balance for a long time of like trying to figure out how to be that competitive and that like fiery on the inside and not let it affect my bowling. Cause I would, you know, things would happen in the course of the game and I would get upset and I would let it affect the next 3 or 4 shots I would throw. And it was something that my dad and my grandfather used to like constantly just be pounding me with, like, hey, the end of this game was terrible because you were worried because you left the ring 10 in the 7th frame and you ruined the rest of the game. And it took me a long time to really try to figure that all out. And I think it probably wasn't until college that I really, really grasped it. And I think part of it is because bowling 5-man team, you get angry, then you have a lot of time to think about it. So and you have a lot of time to calm down. And once that started to click in, and I started to bowl a lot better in those type of type of events, I would be like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And I could now, you watch me bowl now, if you watch me bowl in flow bowling, yeah, there's times where I'm upset, and the majority of the time I'm upset with myself. I'm very hard on myself. It's hard to see that when you're watching, because you don't know if I'm upset that I didn't carry or whatever. But most of the time I'm upset with myself, and you have to learn how, as soon as you get off the approach, take a drink of water, and that's it. You got to, I'm analyzing why that shot didn't go good and trying to figure out the next one. And it took me a long time to learn how to do that.
Yeah, short memory, they always say. Rob mentioned that you guys used to travel to High Rollers together when you were in college. He remembers that one year during one of your High Roller mini eliminator weeks, you went to rent a car after you had arrived to the airport. He said you were waiting outside and you managed to step on one of the rent-a-car spikes that prevents cars from leaving. He said you were hobbling around all week on one leg and then managed to almost win the mini eliminator that year, making the final 5. He said when he asked you, how you bowled so well, you said that the foot injury slowed your feet down and made you throw it better. Wow.
I did. It was I don't remember exactly what happened, but for some reason the thing was down, and so I don't know if a card went through it, but it was like automatic. So sometimes it wasn't like now where they're always up, and then when the car hits it, it just pops back up. So it was like down, and then we were walking out of this rental car. I don't know what we were doing, but we were walking out, and as I was walking, my foot came down as the spike was coming up, and it literally went right through my foot. And it went through the shoe and into my bottom of my foot, and it hurt like bad. And I was like, because it hurt so bad, like I got my foot out pretty quickly, so it didn't go in that far, but it was enough that like it was right in the center of my foot and like the arch of my foot. So I could, like, it was hard to walk for a while, and so I do remember like kind of hobbling a little bit for a while, but luckily it was on my right foot. So it wasn't on my slide. If it was on my slide foot, there's no way I would have been able to bowl. But I do remember that. It's just one of the many ridiculous things that it happened to me as traveling all over the world.
How soon after college did you start on tour? Did you go right away, or was there some time between when you started and when you finished college?
Yeah, I took a year after I was done, because at that time there was it was the exempt tour.
Okay.
And so you couldn't just go out if you wanted to chase the qualifiers. You could, but I took that year and I wanted to keep bowling amateur stuff for a little bit, because I didn't think I was quite ready for the tour. I mean, you see nowadays the guys that come out now are so much more prepared and ready than we were when we were in our early 20s. And so I needed a year to keep bowling. I wanted to bowl some regionals and some other type of things, and just kind of get my feet wet a little more in different levels than collegiate bowling. And so I bowled the U.S. Open that year, bowled one of the other events, and then they had the tour trials where you had to bowl. It was like 45 games in the week, and the top 10 got exempt for the next year, and I got the last spot that year, and then went out the next year. Just another one of those things that I look back on it. Man, I needed to strike an attempt to make it, and I had a messenger 10 struck to make it. And if that doesn't hit, like I don't know if I would have chased the qualifiers next year, or how any of the other things would have went for my career. It's pretty crazy to look back and think.
Yeah, you you had a few second place finishes before you broke through with that first win. What was it like for you to be so close, but not, be able to get over the hump and get that first title for a while?
Yeah, it was difficult. And I think that, you look at progression in any sport, and a lot of times it's not linear. There's a lot of ups and downs, and a lot of, hey, I did really good. Oh my God, this is great. I'm going to be fantastic. But for my progression it was pretty close to a linear type of progression. I made a show really early on my rookie year, but they were like, it was the easiest pattern probably they would have put out in the number of years but they were so easy, and that was the only reason why I made it. And we were bowling those best of 7 match plays, and I caught a good draw and just made that show. And I didn't make another show for like a year and a half. And I went through this thing where I would I could make a fair bit of the cuts. We went from 64 to 32 every week, and then had match play. And I would make a lot of the cuts. I would win no matches for a long period, probably a year, where I couldn't beat anyone in a 7-game match, because there's a different strategy. I never bowled that 7 games on one pair. I didn't know how the pairs broke down or who I was bowling, and how how that strategy kind of worked out. And then I started to learn how to win matches, and I started to make a lot of shows. Like my 3rd or 4th year on tour, I started to make a lot of shows, but then I didn't understand how to win or bowl good games on TV. I didn't understand that process, and then I started to figure that out, and then I started to get a little better on TV and win some matches and win some tournaments, and here I am 15 years later.
The rest is history, right? Yeah. Your first title was the 2009 PBA Chameleon Championship. And afterwards, you said that when Ronnie Russell forced you to mark in the 10th to get the win, you told Randy Peterson that you were thinking that if you don't do it here, when you go home, your mom's going to punch you in the face, and then she's going to ask you every day until you win, how could you not get a strike there? It was really important to her for you to be successful, wasn't it?
Well, I think it was just because she knew how much that I wanted it, and if I never won, I don't think it would have been. She would have always been like proud of me, and I got to live my dream for a while. And but I think because she believed in me so much that she just didn't grasp why I wasn't winning it, and so to be in the driver's seat, and then if I didn't do it, she would have. And she was not one that she wouldn't hold back. Like she would always pick on me. She would, if I, half joking a lot of times, but even when I was bowling juniors, I would have a bad tournament. She's like, "You stink." Like, what are you doing? You're horrible. And she would just be like messing around with me. But she didn't want to like sugarcoat things or kiss my ass all the time. So it was cool to have that kind of balance with my dad, who was always like the analytical bowling type of thing. Hey, this is what you did wrong. Hey, and then I have on the other side, I have my mom, who was like more the emotional side, and it was a really cool balance.
Yeah. Then you follow it up with a win at the U.S. Open in Indianapolis, and that was a blowout win in the championship match. Tell me about how special that was, not only to win your first major, but to do it without that high pressure scenario, in the 9th and 10th frame.
Yeah, I mean, it really validated my existence on the tour. At the time, winning the U.S. Open was not something that people did early on in their career. They didn't do it for one of their first couple titles. It was, if you look back in 15 years before, before I'd won, I mean, I think like the least accomplished person that had won at that point was like Robert Smith, who was really accomplished. So it was like, and then it was like me. That was like my second title, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. This is an insane thing that just happened. It was very much a blur, and it was so cool. Like, because that tournament was always near my house. It was always a Carroller Lane's like 45 minutes from my house. That year that I won happened to be in Indianapolis, but it was a tournament that meant so much to me, just because of the prestige of it and all the people who had won it, before me. And it was the tournament that everybody looks at like, if you win that one, you're somebody. You've done
arrived.
something that is unmatched in the game. And so that was just a really, really cool. I remember like bowling that game, and I went spare open at the beginning of that game, and I just felt something in me that was like, this feels right. Like I'm confident I can do this, and it was a feeling that I had never really felt on TV before, because I had so much struggle, and even times where I didn't struggle, people would bowl bigger games at me, and people were throwing better shots at me in the 10th frames, and all these things were happening. It was like a perfect storm of crap. And so that was that one, like that, it just happened to be at that time where it all felt great. It all came together, and just threw like 8 or 9 of the best shots I've ever thrown on TV after that.
Yeah. So you keep winning, and 2 of those wins are Lucy doubles titles with Shannon O'Keefe, who provided this photo. Thank you for that, Shannon. I did ask her about you, and she said that her favorite thing about you is that you're real, you're kind, easy to communicate with, a great human, and she guesses you're an okay bowler. She says that being able to say that you're her partner comes with great pride, and then being able to win like you have is just awesome. And she hopes that you can get back to the winner's circle soon. So what is it like for you then to bowl doubles with her?
Yeah, I mean, I echo exactly what she just said about me back to her. You know, we really enjoy bowling with each other. The communication level is great. We don't mind being hard on each other. We will tell each other exactly how we feel about how each other is throwing it, or our ball choices, or, you know, anything that we're doing. We're not scared to tell each other, like, hey, you think it's the ball, but you're not throwing it good. You know, we're not scared to say that kind of things, those kind of things to each other. And you need that as a partnership, because you have to trust each other and you have to be real with each other, because you don't want somebody to be, you know, you're just sitting there. If you're doing well, you can't have your partner, you know, sinking. And you know, it's really cool to bowl with somebody of her caliber. And I don't know if I'd bowl that tournament if I couldn't bowl with her. So you know, she's just a great person to be around. We always have even if we're not doing well, like, you know, we didn't have a good event this past year, but you know, we always have a good time with each other. And no matter what, I always enjoy competing with her.
Yeah. Do you like being called William?
Well, Belmo's the only one that calls me William. Literally, no one else does. And that, you know, that's just him. He's got to do his own thing. You know, he's got to be the only one that does something. So it's no one else is going to call me that bowls anymore, because they know that that's what he calls me. So he's trademarked William, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you guys are travel partners, so I asked him about what it's like traveling with you on tour. So here's what he said. He said, William...
I don't even have to know that. I'm not even going to read it. There's going to be exactly the opposite of whatever Shannon and Bob just said.
Oh, totally. No, so he said William is a great guy. We have a lot in common on and off the lanes. He says, because I said, you guys room together. He said, well, we don't actually room together now. We're big boys, but we usually room alone, but do travel together. He says he supposes one of the things that he's most grateful for when traveling with you is that, you know, you both leave your bowling emotions at the bowl. If it's a bad day on the lanes, you both have the ability to let that go before jumping in the car together. You know, he enjoys his time with you. It's never easy to leave your home country, but having you as a mate helps him greatly. Did it take a while for you to not be able to take that bad day on the lanes in the car, or was that something that you had just gotten good at by that point and, you know, were able to do?
Yeah, it's a really difficult thing to do, and I wasn't always like that, but I've been really, really fortunate to always be surrounded by people who were at bare minimum on the same level as me, you know, ability wise and competition wise. So, like, no matter what, there was a pretty good chance if I had a bad day, the person that I was with, they had a better day. Almost always. I traveled around with Mike Fagan, you know, and we hung out with Tommy Jones and Chris Barnes and Wes Malott and Patrick Allen, and those are the people I was surrounded with when I first started on tour. So and those guys they're ruthless. They're not going to let you pout and, you know, be all upset about your day. You get in the car with those guys and you're like, oh, the third game I did this. I don't care. Like, nobody cares. Like, get over it and go get it the next day. You can't operate like that when you're trying to be the best in the world. And that was what I was able to, hanging out with those type of guys and people who are better than you when you first start out is a really, really important thing. You don't get complacent. You don't get the ability to be, you know, think about and pout all day about your performance, because you better figure it out, because the next day, if it, you know, in the next tournament, the week after that, if it keeps going that way, you're going to hear it from those guys.
Yeah. You know, that's a good point that, you know, that's over and over and over again. You go from tournament to tournament to tournament. You're a full-time player. I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean that you bowl all the events and you do something else when there aren't events going on, or is it all bowling all the time?
Yeah, it's just all bowling all the time. You know, when I first started on the tour, I bowled a ton of regionals, you know, and then like probably 3 or 4 years into my professional bowling career, we started to travel overseas a lot after the tour was over. Did some stuff in the summertime in Europe, and just going all over the place doing some clinics. And now I'm a little more financially secure, so I don't do as much of those things anymore. And I have a family now, so I have 2 young kids, and I'm married. So my wife works; she's a teacher, so I don't spend as much time doing grinding like that as as I used to. But certainly, like COVID shut us down a little bit. You know, I still would travel overseas. Usually this time of year, there's a tournament in Korea and a tournament in Thailand that we go to, and we haven't got to do that in a couple of years. But when we're eventually able to do that, I'm sure I'll go back and do those events again a couple more times. And but yeah, I mean, I try to spend as much time with my family as humanly possible at this point.
Yeah. Tell me about bowling overseas. What's that like? I mean, you just said you did it, in events for the tour. You've done Team USA. Is it that much different than bowling in America, or is it similar?
I mean, the lanes are the lanes. It's not that really. Certain times when you travel to certain places in like Europe, yeah, you may be at because everything it's tighter over there. It's smaller. It's the cities are old. It's like, so you have these bowling centers that are built inside these buildings that may only be 12 or 16 lanes, and you're bowling on lane 9, and you're bowling right next to a wall, and the wall is like on the gutter, and so then you have to you're kicking the wall every time you throw it. There's stuff that you may not see here. But I mean, for the most part, it's very similar. But the thing that affects you the most is the time zones.
Yeah.
And that is something that's really, really difficult. I don't know if like a lot of people that don't really travel like grasp it enough, because I certainly didn't before I started to travel. Is that like jet lag is brutal. It's a tired that you can't replicate other than being jet lag. It's different than just being a normal day tired, because your body just has no idea what it's doing, especially when we go to Japan. You're 13 hours different, and you're awake when you're supposed to be sleeping, and you're sleeping when you're supposed to be awake, and now you're bowling and it's the middle of the night. Your body's got no idea what's happening. It's like, why are we bowling? We're supposed to be sleeping. This is crazy. Everything is completely flipped on its head, and it can be really, really difficult. The one thing that is a gift and a curse for me a little bit is I can't sleep on planes hardly at all. Like I'll get 20, 30 minutes here or there. But so whenever I get to, Japan or Thailand or something, I'm cooked. I haven't slept at all. So I do sometimes get a decent night's sleep the first night, where a lot of guys don't. So like Belmo, for example, whenever you hear him bitching and moaning about how he's too tired, he hasn't slept a whole lot. So whenever he bowls bad the first couple of weeks on tour, there's always these people like, oh my God, I bet he's like exhausted. He just traveled. And part of the reason for that is he sleeps like a baby on an airplane. And so when he travels from Sydney to Houston, the flight's, almost an entire day, 16 hours, 15 hours where the flight is, he sleeps for 12 hours on the plane.
Wow.
And so when he lands wherever he's going, he's like, oh, I couldn't sleep at all last night. I'm exhausted. I go, yeah, no kidding, because you slept for 12 hours on the plane. You're not just going to land and then 3 hours later sleep another 8. That's not how it works.
Yep.
So we're the exact opposite travelers.
Yeah, for sure. Take me back to when you won the tournament that made you Hall of Fame eligible. What was that like?
Yeah, so that was a roller coaster of emotions. Because my 10th title, I won it at the Hall of Fame Classic, and it was the first tournament I bowled after my mom passed, and so it was just a wild roller coaster ride of emotions. Because it was the few years before that were lean. I wasn't doing well. The lanes were changing a bunch. My instincts out there and how to play the lanes were all wrong, and I needed to make some changes in my game, and I did it before that season, and it all worked out, and that was really, really cool. And it was I was like halfway into the, okay, I'm Hall of Fame eligible, but at the same time, I had a couple of titles that, you know, were the Lucy Bonneau doubles titles, which, you know, they're not typically PBA titles until a few years ago. So like, I was like, I am, but I'm like, I'm not, you know, I may have gotten enough votes at that time to get in maybe, but I still didn't feel like validated enough to really say, hey, I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame. And so that kind of really kept me going and driven enough over the couple of years after that to really try to, you know, win some more events.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, you know, COVID kind of affected us all. Tour resumes after a pandemic-related shutdown, and you were planning to head to Florida for the East Region Finals of the Players' Championship this year. That was the title you were defending. But then suddenly you couldn't bowl because of COVID. What happened there, and how did it affect you?
That was another wild experience from the time we got done that event, because when I got it's a weird type of event, because normally when we're bowling and we're bowling something to make a TV show, the people who are bowling for that show, you're near each other. You know exactly what's happening. You know exactly what the scores are. Hey, this guy needs a spare. This guy needs a double. Whatever. You know it. Mm-hmm. This event was different because they never reseeded based on standing. So my last game was all the way at the high end. I was on the end pair, and I knew I was like, I forget exactly how many pins out I was. Maybe like 15 pins out of the show or something. And I bowled like 210 or something. I remember leaving like a 10 pin in the 11th, and I was like, it's just not going to be enough. It was one of those weekends where I was leaving a lot of 10 pins, and I couldn't really find enough strikes. And I was like, it didn't work out. You know, I was happy with the way I bowled, but I was like, I'm not going to make it. And I go down, and I'm just kind of taking my balls to the car, and I happen to look up, and Tim Foy leads the big four, and I hear this big groan in the crowd, like, oh. I'm like, I don't know, I guess he didn't make it. I don't know, but I didn't think it was me that made it. I thought somebody else probably made it. And so I'm taking my balls to the car. I'm coming back, and they're like, hey, you know, you made it. I go, get the hell out of here. There's no way I made it. And I was like, I'm not thinking I made the show until they announced the scores. And then they announced the scores, and I made it. I was like, geez, I can't believe I made that. And so I'm like, man, what a incredible run of luck I'm having right now in the past like 18 months of professional bowling. Like everything is just falling in line, and things are going well, and I'm going to bowl in the show, and you know, have a shot at this big check, and then I was supposed to fly out the next Sunday at like, my flight was like 7 a.m. You know, I was bowling my part of that show was taped on like Monday afternoon, so I was leaving Sunday morning, and I'm going to bed that Saturday night, and I'm like, something's not right. I don't feel good. I feel like that achiness you feel when you're about to get sick. You just like, I feel real run down. I'm like, I don't know, my throat's a little scratchy. I'm like, I don't feel right. I'm like, all right, let's just go lay down, and then we'll see what happens. And then like the next 5 hours, I didn't sleep a wink. I got the chills. I was freezing. I was burning up. I'm like, this is bad. This is real bad. And so I'm like, I couldn't sleep because I just kept thinking, what am I going to do? Do I have the flu? Do I have COVID? Like, what am I going to do? My flight's at 7 a.m. Like, how am I going to make this work? And I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to find, because at that time it was the testing. We still weren't around me. I couldn't get a test that quickly. Now it's a little more streamlined, a little easier. I was like, I don't even know where to get a rapid test. I have no idea. And so I'm trying to figure out where to finally find a place. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to push my flight back to the afternoon, and then I'm going to get this test. I'm going to see what happens. And I'm like, I feel like total crap all morning. I go get a test at like 10 or 11 in the morning, get the rapid test, comes back positive. I'm like, I don't even know even if it was negative, I don't even know if I could have went. I felt terrible. Yeah. So I'm like, and I'm texting everybody, you know, Tom Clark and everybody. I'm like, I got COVID. I can't make it. And so that it was tough, but I'm like, you know, it made it. If I would have led my region, I definitely would have felt way worse about, you know, more bitter about it. But I didn't think I deserved to make it anyway. So I was like, you know, what are you going to do? And Tim Foy got the bowl. He's a real good dude. And I was sad. I was actually sad that he split in the 10th to miss, because I've been in those situations. It's awful. Like, it is a terrible feeling. And so I was like, at least got the bright spot. Tim got the didn't get the bowl in his first show, and so I was laid up for a few days after that. It was not good, losing taste and smell for a while, and my wife is a teacher. She had to teach virtually that whole time, and so she was in live teaching from like 8 a.m. to like noon every day on the computer, and my kids were home, and so my son's got to do virtual school. My daughter at the time was 3.5, so she's just running around making noise all day, and I'm just locked in my room. I'm just sitting there for 10 days, just never leaving the room. She's coming up, giving me something to eat and drink, and that was it. It was a horrible feeling because I was sick, and also because for almost 2 weeks she was exhausted. So it was a tough few weeks, but made it through, and just like everybody else during this thing, and everybody's all right. So worked out.
Yeah. Thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
Your wife, like you said, was a college bowler at Fairleigh Dickinson. She knows what she's doing on the lanes. And, you probably come back from these tournaments and explain how things went. She probably watches or keeps track on flow, whatever. How much, I guess, guidance is there from her as far as, when it comes to what you're doing and what you could be doing better?
Actually, zero. And it's part of the reason why our relationship works so well, is that I'll come home and she'll say, I don't know, it's a tough week. You thirsty? I don't know. What do you want to do for dinner tonight? It's like we're just on to something else, and it's just she knows enough that she knows when we can talk about it and when I don't want to talk about it, and she has a pretty good instinct for those things, and she'll always listen to me if I want to vent to her about something, but she never says like, hey, I was watching, I thought you should have done this. Yeah. Because she knows that gets under my skin, because it doesn't really help me at that point. I'm done. It's already over. And she knows between me and our ball reps out there, Mike Wolf and Eric Krause, we've exhausted the options if it's not going well. So she's there for the support, and I call her. We talk about how her day went and talk about the kids, and she knows that's going to make me happier than discussing the day again. So I think that's because she bowled. I think she understands it. She understands that. She understands that part. And maybe if she wasn't in sports at all, maybe she wouldn't. She would want to talk about it more. But it's definitely part of the reason why it works so well.
Sure. I know I'm risking sacrilege here by putting up another Big Mike quote, because I'm guessing Sweep the Rack is online right now. But I want to tell you about something else that he said. He said that it's very cliche but true in this case, that you're one of his best friends, best husbands and fathers that he knows. He says, despite all your success in bowling, you would never forget where you came from or who you are. And this is probably what he loves most about you. And he says that's why he and all his people, including, Rob and Sweep the Rack, ride so hard for you. When you make a show or win a title or a major, you're out there doing it for you and your family, obviously. But all of your people know that you're out there putting those guys on your back and sharing a piece of your success with them. Is that something you kind of do subconsciously, or do you have that kind of in the back of your mind as you advance in professional bowling in your career?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something I think about when I go back to the room that night. Definitely not while I'm competing, just singularly focused on the competition. But yeah, I think about it all the time. And vivid memory of is when I won that 10th title at the Hall of Fame Classic was the phone call I had with Mike the next day. And you curse on here? Right?
Please. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I figure this is kind of like the average Marvel movie. You can get away with that.
Yeah, all right. And so I remember talking to him, and he just like, I called him we were talking for a second, and he just like paused and stopped, and he's like, yo, dude, like, what the fuck, man? Like, the Hall of Fame? Dude, like the Hall of Fame? Really? This is insane. And I'm like, and it wasn't until like that moment that it really like like really sunk in for me when we had that conversation. I'm like, yeah, and I started, and then because then I started thinking back to like me and him in high school, and me, him, and Rob bowling JBTs and all those things. Like, man, like how did we get here? Like we were just goofy dudes who were just hanging out and bowling these tournaments. The next thing I know, I could potentially be in the professional Hall of Fame. It's wild. And yeah, to have friends like that who are always have your back, and sometimes I have to tell Mike, oh, you gotta calm down, because he'll fight anybody for me if drop the hat. So if somebody's online saying something nasty about me, he's got to come in and I'm like, oh, Mike, relax, settle down. Like, you don't got to do all that stuff. But that's the kind of the people him and Rob are, and people would misunderstand both of them. But as somebody who's grown up with both of them since I was young, like I understand where they come from all the time, and they're my best friends, and it's not, they were both in my wedding, and if I got married today, they would both still be in my wedding. And a lot of people can't say that. I've been married 11 years, so a lot of people, life changes so much for most people. You can't say that, but yeah, if I got married 30 years from now, they'd be in that wedding too. So yeah, they're the best, and I think about those guys all the time while I'm traveling, and things are going the way they are.
Yeah. You recently were inducted into the Saginaw Valley Athletics Hall of Fame. You went and made a speech there. I've called the athletics office many times. I've never gotten a response, to try and get a hold of your speech. So tell me what you said, and kind of what you hope your legacy will be, moving forward.
Well, I will tell you, if you had gotten any piece of that speech, I would have been angry, because I haven't gotten any of it either. I think they did. I think they filmed the whole banquet, and I think they are compiling a video and sending it to us. But I don't have it yet either. But yeah, I tell you, doing a speech over a computer is so different than doing it in person. You're just looking at yourself and trying to talk about people who may have been there at that time, and like I'm just staring at myself. I'm trying to throw a couple jokes in, but I don't know if anybody's laughing because I'm not there. It was a really bizarre speech in that way. And we only had, they're like, hey, just 5 minutes. I'm like, all right. And when you start doing it, it's in your head, you're like, oh, 5 minutes, that's kind of a long time. I can get what I need to say. But then you start writing things down, and you're like, oh my God, this is not enough time. So you're always going to forget people and forget different stories. But I just tried to make sure I touched on Coach Dan Dorian, and he passed away some years ago, and just wanted to make sure I mentioned him a little bit, and definitely mentioned Rob, and Brian Wallachek, and some of the other guys that we bowled with and hung out with, and just all of the people that were there at that time. Just all small part of the reason why I'm successful professionally, and who I am as a person. So it was just cool to be able to give all those people a couple seconds and a shout out.
Yeah. And then moving forward, I mean, we talked about the 2022 schedule, hopefully coming out soon. I mean, we're all anxious to find out, what tour dates they're going to be, what cities they're going to be in. What about for you? I mean, do you go back out full time this next year? How many years can you keep doing this? You've got a birthday coming up next week.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to be 40 next week. So this is, I've always told myself, and I think I'm afforded this luxury because my wife works, and she works really hard, and I'm not doing this alone, for my family, that when I feel like I can't compete anymore to the level that I want to compete at, then I'm probably done. I don't want to just keep going just because I love the game and I'm out there finishing like 50th every week. I just don't want to do that. And so I don't know how long that is. I don't know when that takes. I have no idea. But I think I'll know exactly when it is when it comes. And I think I'll, if in 5 years every single person bowls like Anthony Simonson, I'm probably like, no, I can't beat these guys. I have enough trouble with one Anthony Simonson. I don't need like 30 of them. And so, time comes for everybody, and you just have to be real with yourself. And so whenever that happens, then it is. And then I go watch my son play basketball and my daughter do whatever she's going to be doing at that time, and enjoy life. So, I mean, whatever that is, I'll look back on my career so fondly and so happily, because it's been fantastic.
Yeah, I think a lot of other people will too, and that's a lot to be proud of. So on our show, we have you go off the sheet at the end. And what that means is we want you to pick somebody who you think would be a good guest on a future episode. And talent level is kind of out the window. We look for people who, are passionate about the sport and have a unique story to tell. So, Bill O'Neill, who would you like to challenge to be on a future episode of Bowling with the Fef?
So one of the people that I think is one of the best interviews that you can have. Also somebody that I learned a lot from when I was first coming up on the tour, and I eavesdropped on a lot of his interviews that he was doing while he was in the bowling center, and picked up things that he said, and I was like, oh man, I thought about it the opposite way. He's so smart. This makes total sense. I can't believe I was thinking about it this other way. This guy's brilliant, and he's a great storyteller. He's a great personality. He's Norm Duke, and I think he's such a great person to interview. He's had so many great stories, and just his knowledge of the game and how he approaches it, and how he attacks the lanes, and him being able to survive, into his 50s, bowling on the tour and doing it successfully, and still being great, and still being somebody who, when certain patterns are out, you're like, maybe Norm, and there's a lot to be said for that, so I think he would be a great guest for you.
Yeah. Well, great. Norm, if you are watching, if you see this on replay and you're up for the challenge, let me know. You can DM me on Facebook or email me at bowlingwiththefef@yahoo.com. That is, if you have internet, right? Didn't you mention that he may not have internet?
He might not. I don't know. He may be. Norm might be off the grid.
Yeah. We can do tin can telephone if we need to. I just want to have him on because I think that I agree with you. That would be a great interview. I'll admit I don't have my next live stream guest planned out, but in 2 weeks on the 25th, we do have the privilege of interviewing Big Mike. So kind of get us started with that. What would you say that we should know about Big Mike, kind of in 30 words or whatever, and what should we talk to him about?
All of Mike's takes come from a place of intelligence. However, most of them are wrong, and so you have to be careful, because he talks about everything with such passion that he can bring you into his world. I think he should have been a lawyer, really. Was probably his calling that he missed, because he's talking, does it very passionately, and then you get to the end, and if you just go, no, that doesn't make any sense, we're not doing that. And so so you got to be careful with Mike, and especially his junior gold takes are all terrible. He's got a lot. His league bowling takes, I think, are terrible. But he means well. He definitely means well. So you have to give him that.
Yeah, definitely an ambassador for growing the sport and all that. And we are looking forward to having him here October 25th, 6 p.m. Central. Bill, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for the time and for coming on and sharing your bowling story with us.
No problem. And if you need a couple quotes for Big Mike in a couple weeks, then
yeah. I will. I'll hold you to that. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Be just and fear not, and we will see you next time.